Last week, I did a live stream on this channel where the audience got to vote in polls to rank all 32 NHL teams into a tier list heading into the 2022-2023 NHL season. Some of those results I certainly agreed with, and some of them I definitely would have had different. So that's what we're going to do today, is I am going to rank all 32 NHL teams and put them in a tier list based on solely my opinion heading into this season. Let's go. Hey everybody, so during the live stream last week, you guys got to vote on all 32 NHL teams and where you would have them ranked heading into this season. Now it is my turn, and today I am going to rank all 32 teams and put them in which tier I believe they belong in, solely based on my opinion. So let's not waste any more time and get right into it. Okay, everybody, here we are. Just a quick refresher in case you didn't see the live last week. The different tiers are Cup Favorite, Cup Contender, Playoff Team, Playoff Line, or Playoff Bubble. Those are basically the bubble teams, or non-playoff, which are the teams that we're pretty sure are not going to make the playoffs. So let's get into it here. I'm going to start with the Atlantic Division and work my way west. So we are going to start off with the Boston Bruins. And it's going to be an interesting year for the Bruins. I certainly have my doubts. I'm hoping that they're going to be a playoff team again. But to me, this team is on that playoff line. They may make it. They may not. It's going to be a very interesting year for them. Next up, we have the Buffalo Sabres. While Buffalo certainly made some strides in the right direction, especially last year, we started to see some improvement in that division, which is going to be very, very difficult this year. I just don't think they've done enough to make the playoffs. So I think Buffalo is going to end up on the outside again this year. The Detroit Red Wings. This is a very, very interesting team because, man, they've gotten a lot better this offseason. They've made some huge moves. I'm putting them on the playoff line. Rebuilding no more. There is a legitimate chance that the Detroit Red Wings make the playoffs this year. Not saying it's a guarantee. I'm not saying that they're going to be a playoff team, but I think they're going to be in contention, and they're going to be fighting for a potential playoff spot. It's probably a wild card, and I've got them on that line. Florida Panthers, next team here. Florida's definitely lost a little bit this offseason. They're not, I don't think they're the juggernaut that they were last year, but I don't think they've lost so much that they're going to drop out of the playoffs altogether. This is still a playoff team, in my opinion, and Florida should be in the Atlantic. Montreal Canadiens, they're up next. They finished last in this division last year. I don't see them improving that much beyond that. I do think they're a little better. I don't think they're going to be necessarily one of the absolute worst teams in the league like they were last season, but I still don't see them getting into the playoffs, especially with how stacked this division is. So that brings us now to the Ottawa Senators, another extremely interesting team, very similar, in my opinion, to the Detroit Red Wings. This is a team that has gotten significantly better this offseason. They added Claude Giroux. They added Alex DeBrincat. You've got Jake Sanderson coming in to help out that defense. Ottawa is going to be in contention for a playoff spot. Again, I don't think it's a guarantee that they get in, but I do think they're going to be in contention. Them and Detroit are both going to be fighting to try and get a wild card spot this year. And finally, to close out the Atlantic, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning. And Tampa Bay, for the third year in a row, was back in the Stanley Cup final last season. They did lose Andre Palat this offseason. They did lose Jan Ruda this offseason. But still, this team is one of those teams that I think is a Cup favorite. They're going to be one of the top 3-4 teams in the league, especially come playoff time. You can never count them out in the postseason. So I've got Tampa still in that top tier. And finally, Toronto here. The Toronto Maple Leafs. I have really high expectations for this team in the regular season. I just don't trust them at all in the playoffs. So I think they're capable of being a cup contender if they could finally win a playoff series, but so far they haven't been able to do that. they're without a doubt a playoff team. I actually think they're probably going to win the division in the regular season this year. But I just don't trust this team in the playoffs, so I can't put them higher than playoff team until I see them actually win a playoff series. But for now, they're certainly a playoff team in Toronto. All right, let's move on now to the Metro Division, starting with the Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina, they are definitely a cup contender in my opinion. They'll be one of the best teams in the East again this year. Very, very strong. They've had their troubles in the postseason as far as going deep. They generally have been losing in the first or second round, but at some point they might be able to get over that hump like we saw Colorado do last year. And they're definitely a contender, in my opinion, in the Eastern Conference. Columbus Blue Jackets, very, very interesting team here. They added Johnny Gaudreau this offseason. They've got a lot of young talent coming in. This is going to be a much more fun team to watch, I think, and a very interesting team to watch this year. I don't know if adding Gaudreau is going to be enough to get them into the playoffs. I'm going to put them on the playoff line. I think they might be able to be in competition for a wild card spot, but I don't know if they're going to be much higher than that. I definitely don't think they're completely out of it, but it's going to be tough to get in, so I've got them as a bubble team. The New Jersey Devils, this team I just don't think is ready yet. They're going to go in that non-playoff for at least another year, in my opinion. They're young. They've got some good young talent, but I don't think they're ready yet. New York Islanders, they had a really disappointing year last year, and then they didn't really do much at all this offseason other than trading for Alexander Romanov. I'm going to have them on the line. I don't think they're a terrible team. I don't think they're out of it completely. Don't forget, this was a team that made back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals before missing the playoffs last year and still has relatively the same roster. So a lot went against them last season. I think if they have a little bit better fortune this year, they could be back into that wild card contention. I'm going to put them as a bubble team this year. The New York Rangers, we saw them go to the Eastern Conference Final last year. They are definitely a cup contender, in my opinion. I think they are going to be a very, very good team again this year. I think Shesterkin is establishing himself as one of the best goaltenders in the entire league, and this is a Rangers team that could be right back in the Eastern Conference Final or maybe even into the Cup Finals this season. Philadelphia Flyers, well, this is pretty easy. Expectations are that Philadelphia is really going to struggle this year. I agree. I don't see much good happening there in Philly. They will not be a playoff team. The Pittsburgh Penguins, this is a team that spent a lot of their offseason bringing guys back. Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, Ricard Raquel. So this is a team that I think Pittsburgh's going to be your pretty typical Pittsburgh. They'll make the playoffs. They should certainly be a playoff team. I think they're a little short of maybe being a top-tier cup contender because I think there are better teams really in a better spot to go on a long playoff run, but I do think Pittsburgh is going to be in the playoffs for sure. And lastly, to close out the Eastern Conference, we have the Washington Capitals, and they're going to be without Nicklas Backstrom for probably the entire season. They're going to be without Tom Wilson for at least the first couple months of the season. This team's getting older as well. There's definitely some question marks that I have with Washington. I'm going to put them on that playoff line. They were a wild card team last year. I think they're probably a wild card team at best again this year. And there's definitely a chance there that if they run into some injury issues or something like that, that they could end up on the outside. So Washington, to me, is on that playoff line. Okay, moving on now to the Western Conference. Starting in the Central Division, we have the Arizona Coyotes, and I think we all know Arizona is on Connor Bedard watch. They're going to be near the bottom of the league again. Definitely not a playoff team. And Chicago is right there with them. Chicago basically openly said that they're going into a rebuild this offseason. All the moves that they made were basically, rebuilding moves to get draft picks. Chicago is not going to be competitive this year. We have the defending Stanley Cup champion, Colorado Avalanche. They are going right up here as a cup favorite to repeat. Certainly a team that is good enough and capable of doing that. Going to be interesting now with the goaltending because Darcy Kemper's not there anymore. It's Alexander Georgiev and Pavel Francouz as the duo, and neither one of them has ever been a full-time starter, so it's going to be interesting to see how the goaltending goes in Colorado, but that is a juggernaut of a team in front of them in goal, and they'll be a favorite once again. Dallas Stars, this is an interesting team. I'm putting them on the playoff line. Dallas is always kind of tough to gauge, but I think, depending on if things go well, they could certainly make the playoffs. But at the same time, if one thing goes wrong or if Jake Ottinger gets injured or something like that, this team could very well find themselves on the outside. So they're a bubble team to me. Minnesota Wild. This team has not had a great offseason, in my opinion, but they've still, got some really, really good players. Marc-Andre Fleury in goal now is the full-time starter. I'm going to say playoff team for Minnesota. I don't think they're as good as they were last season, but I do think that they're still going to get into the playoffs. Nashville Predators. This team was a wild card team last year, got absolutely lit up, though, by Colorado in the playoffs, but it's Colorado. What do you expect? I think Nashville gets into the playoffs this year. This is hard for me between playoff team and playoff line, but I do think that Nashville is better than Dallas, so I'm going to put Nashville up here in the playoff team category, and I do think that they get in this year. I like a lot of what the Preds have to offer. They just got to stay healthy. St. Louis Blues, this is a team that, was very good last year. I think they're going to be the second best team in the Central Division this season. I'm going to put them up here as a contender. Now, this is obviously extremely dependent on Jordan Binnington and Jordan Binnington playing well. Because they don't have that backup plan of Ville Husso anymore, so it's really going to be all on Binnington. But if Binnington can have a good, solid season in goal, I think the Blues are a contender in the West. And finally, to close out the Central Division, we've got the Winnipeg Jets. Man, I think they could maybe get back to being on that playoff line if they, really get good production out of their top guys, but there's still a lot here with Winnipeg that I'm very much questioning. I'm going to give them a light play. I'm going to put them on that playoff line, but man, I think they're much closer to being a non-playoff team than a playoff team, but I'll put them on the line because I don't think they're completely out of it. If things really go well for them, we'll have to wait and see. Anaheim Ducks now moving on to the Pacific. And Anaheim, I think it's going to be tough for them to get in because I think probably only 3 teams from that Pacific, 4 at most, will get into the playoffs. So I think it's going to be tough for the Ducks to get in, but man, they have so much young talent there. I'm going to go non-playoff for the Ducks. I just think they're probably like a year away, but I kind of want to put them on that playoff line because I do think they have a shot at a wild card spot. Yeah, I'm going to put the Ducks up here, and there's just so much young talent there. I don't think they're going to be a bad team. It's just going to be tough to get in that division, but I'm going to say that they'll have a shot at a wild card spot. The Calgary Flames, what a crazy offseason they've had. First, it was really, really bad, losing Johnny Gaudreau and trading away Matthew Tkachuk, but then they were able to get Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar, sign Nazem Kadri, and in my opinion, that's got Calgary right up here as a cup contender. I wouldn't necessarily call them a favorite, but I do have them as a contending team this year without a doubt. They have a chance to potentially be even better than they were last season. The Edmonton Oilers, their biggest rival and another good Pacific Division team here, they go right up there as well. Oilers are a cup contender. We saw them in the Western Conference Final last year. I think they definitely could get back to the conference finals this year, maybe even go further. So I've got Edmonton up there as a cup contender. The Los Angeles Kings, they were kind of a surprise playoff team last year. coming out of that rebuild and finally taking that next step. They added Kevin Fiala this offseason to that offense. They should score more. I definitely think the Kings are a playoff team. They should not be heading backwards. They should still be a team on the rise with all of that young talent. So the Kings cannot take a step back from where they were at last season. They should be a playoff team again. San Jose Sharks, this is a non-playoff team. This is a team that seems to finally realize that they need a rebuild and are headed in that direction. So San Jose, don't look for them to be in the postseason this year. Seattle Kraken, they're up next. I feel like with the additions of Burakovsky and Bjorkstrand, this team's going to be better than they were last season. I kind of want to put them on that playoff line, but I'm going to say no playoffs for the Kraken. I think there's too many teams ahead of them that they would have to pass. I do think Seattle is certainly going to be better than they were last year, but I don't think it's going to be enough to get into the playoffs. Vancouver Canucks, this is a team that I think is the epitome of playoff line. Like this team could go either way. I mean, it feels like it's 50-50 whether they get in or not. And then finally, the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, their goaltending situation is not ideal with Robin Lehner out for the year. I mean, you're looking at Logan Thompson, Aiden Hill, and Laurent Brossoit being the goaltenders there. I'm going to say playoff line. They missed the playoffs last year, and I definitely think that it's possible for them to miss again this year. I also think they could get in as maybe that 3 or 4 spot in the Pacific. But I'm going to say playoff line for Vegas. We'll see if they can get in or not. Them and Vancouver, I think, are really going to be fighting it out for maybe one to get in and one not. But there you have it, everybody. That is my tier list for 2022-2023, where I have each of these teams ranked. Now, as far as like horizontally, they're not in any order as far as like who's closer or not. They're just by division here. But at the end of the day, I think, Tampa and Colorado are your cup favorites, the teams that were in the finals last year. Your contenders, I think Carolina, New York, St. Louis, Calgary, Edmonton, those are all contending teams. Playoff teams, but maybe not convinced me that they're a full-on contender yet, are Florida, Toronto, just for lack of playoff success. Pittsburgh, because I just think there's a little bit missing there, particularly defensively. Minnesota, I don't think as good as they were last year. Nashville, I don't think is ready to contend, but will make the playoffs. LA, similar, will make the playoffs, not ready to contend. Playoff line, that's where I think a lot of the teams are. Boston, Detroit, Ottawa, Columbus, the Islanders, Capitals, Stars, Jets, Ducks, Canucks, Golden Knights, all those teams I think could make the playoffs or could very easily be on the outside. And then your non-playoff teams that I am pretty convinced will not be in the postseason this year. Buffalo, Montreal, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Arizona, Chicago, San Jose, and Seattle. I think those teams are just too far out, too far away from making a playoff run. So let me know what you guys think now down in the comments, where you would have teams ranked, what you have differently than me. This is definitely different than how the viewers of the live stream last week ranked things. Some of them are certainly the same, but there are certainly some differences in this list as well. So I just wanted to put my opinion out there and let you guys know where I have each team ranked heading into this season. So thank you guys so much for watching. With that, please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our merchandise store, memberships, and donations down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all very soon.